Everyone now. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. The World Federation of Ukrainian Women's Organizations is very pleased to welcome you to this webinar. We're hosting this parallel event as an offering within the NGO Forum organized by the NGO CSW in New York at the 67th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. This webinar is focused on the topic of sharing thoughts about providing mental health care for the internally and externally displaced persons of Ukraine. On February 24th, a year ago, the Russian Federation launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, intensifying the attacks and occupation of Ukrainian territory that began 9 years ago and launched an all-out war of aggression on its neighbor, Ukraine. It is a genocidal war with blatantly colonial and imperial ambitions. Ukrainians are bravely resisting domination. Over the past 9 years, over a third of Ukraine's entire population has been displaced. Internally, that means 5 million people displaced from their homes. Externally, another 9 million have sought safety beyond Ukraine's borders, mostly women and children seeking safety for their immediate vulnerable people. Any displacement means loss and grief, the loss of homes, of personal possessions, of livelihood, and more deeper losses of loved ones, of family and friends. On top of that, people have been visited by personal injury, and those under Russian occupation have also experienced brutal sexual violence and torture at the hands of the Russian military, whose mandated and planned strategy has been to use rape as a weapon of war. There's serious anxiety across the whole population, and also very severe trauma for a big percentage of the people of Ukraine. So we know that mental health care will be a dominant concern for many years to come and into the years after, into the recovery of Ukraine. I am Martha Kebalo. I am the main representative for the World Federation of Ukrainian Women's Organizations to the United Nations Economic and Social Council. And I extend to you greetings from our president, Dr. Yevgenia Petrova, who is unable to join us today. This event today is organized in partnership with two global international providers of health and mental health care. Those are the Refugee Mental Health Resource Network that was founded by Dr. Elizabeth Carl, and also the Health Right International, a global organization providing public health across the world with a country program in Ukraine. Dr. Teresa Castillo is the president of Health Right International, and she will introduce that organization in our program. Unfortunately, Dr. Elizabeth Carl, the founder of the Refugee Mental Health Resource Network, is unable to join us today because of technical difficulties. So we just simply greet her and wish her well. I'd like to introduce someone special now. We are very honored to have with us today the Deputy Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine, Ulyana Tokaryeva. Ulyana Tokaryeva is a member of a large delegation that has come from Ukraine to participate in the Commission on the Status of Women. We're very, very happy to greet her and let her say some words to you.
Thank you, Marta. Dear guests and partners, the military offensive launched by Russia against Ukraine seriously affected all Ukrainians. The war has negatively impacted our lives. The economic situation has deteriorated. The level of distress and anxiety keeps elevating. Most internally displaced women and children have experienced traumatic events. The number of veterans is increasing, and they need specific support from the government and communities for the transition from military to civilian life. Psychological rehabilitation, social adaptation, job adaptation, long-term and comprehensive social and mental health support for veterans and their families are vital for our combatants' smooth and stress-free return to their normal lives. Moreover, it is essential to ensure that all Ukrainians in need can access timely psychological assistance and support services. These services are provided by specialists of centers of social agencies and centers for social services who are at the forefront of social work today. Not psychologists alone, but also qualified social work specialists and social workers with practical skills provide mental health support. They're the first point of contact for internally displaced people, provide first aid, calm down, conduct assessments of individual or family needs, and assess risks that a person is in crisis. For instance, depression, loss of meaning of life, suicidal thoughts. Over 300 psychologists and more than 3,600 social work specialists are employed in the system of centers of social agencies. With support from the World Health Organization, the First Lady of Ukraine, Mrs. Olena Zelenska, has initiated the development of the National Mental Health Framework. World Health Organization estimated that more than 15 million Ukrainians need mental health support. Available resources of the government are not enough to respond to this challenge. We rely on the resources of government, of international organizations that support governmental and non-governmental organizations. I would like to say thank you to World Federation of Ukrainian Women's Organizations, Health Right International, Ukrainian Foundation for Public Health, and others who support Ukrainian people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Tokarev. Well, for laying out emphasizing the magnitude of the need. Thank you for the recognition. Thank you for the overview of the efforts that the Ukrainian government is already planning to address this very long-term need. I would like now to introduce Dr. Castillo. Dr. Teresa Castillo is the Chief Program Officer of Health Right International, about which we're very eager to learn more. So thank you, Dr. Castillo. I give you the floor.
Thank you, Martha, and thank you, Deputy Minister. Many thanks to the government of Ukraine for your partnership and leadership. I'm very happy to help host this event as the representative from Health Right headquarters. Just to tell you a little bit about Health Right before we dive into the broader panel where you'll hear more about our programming. Health Right has been in existence for 30 years, and we ensure that marginalized populations have equitable access to healthcare. And we do that by strengthening healthcare systems and communities through focusing on 4 core issues: HIV, mental health, violence, and reproductive, maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent healthcare. And we recognize that these are overlapping, intersecting health issues for the most marginalized communities. In particular, we've been working in Ukraine since 2005 on development issues, and we've engaged in protracted conflict relief in the East since 2015 in the bordering oblast. But with the recent invasion in February, our work switched from development to humanitarian work during the active hostilities. We had to shift and think about our staff welfare, crisis management, security issues, supply chain management. And despite working in a war zone, our aim remains steadfast. We focus on strengthening the resilience of Ukrainian survivors and rebuilding the infrastructure. We currently have projects focused on health protection and essential supplies, which you'll hear about shortly. But within Ukraine, we know that at least 9.6 million may have mental health conditions. And in addition, 15 million are in need of psychosocial support. And that greatest need lies, that burden lies with women and children. When you think about the gender dynamics, the workforce responding to IDP needs is largely from women-dominated professions, such as social workers, psychologists, and they themselves have unique vulnerable needs. As well, when you look at the IDP beneficiaries, the larger share of that is predominantly women and children. So in the coming presentations, you'll hear more about our work and the creative ways that we have developed to integrate the importance of mental health and psychosocial support across sectors, but also the importance of caring for the carers, the frontline workers, which are so essential to the current response. And the knowledge that burnout, the staff burnout of many organizations, not just our own, but across the board, is so critical to the survival and implementation of these much needed programs. So thank you for the remarks and that opportunity to make remarks, and I will turn the mic over to my colleague, Halina Skipalska, who is the country director of Health Right Ukraine and the Ukrainian Foundation for Public Health. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Castillo. I just signing off. Halina, I just want to say Halina is not a stranger to us at World Federation, and also has spoken before our constituent members, the Ukrainian National Women's League of America. Welcome, Halina, from us too.
Thank you, dear colleagues. I would like to ask you, Teresa, to help me and to share your screen with my presentation.
I think Natalia has your presentation.
Oh, okay, Natalia has. Okay, great. Yes. So, dear colleagues and guests, my name is Halina Skipalska, and I'm the Health Right International Country Director for Ukraine and as the Executive Director of the Ukrainian Foundation for Public Health. Today, I would like to talk about our efforts to address the mental health issues of Ukrainian IDPs and a creative approach we use for this, the integration of essential mental health and gender-based violence survivor care into pre-existing primary health facilities in Ukraine. In a setting of ongoing war and humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, the number of people in need of humanitarian aid and protection increased from 3 million people at the start of 2022 to 17.7 million in 2023. The risk of gender-based violence, including conflict-related sexual violence, increased very rapidly in 2022 too. According to the UN data, we see 3.7 million people needed services to prevent gender-based violence or support survivors in 2022. And about 15 million will be in need of psychosocial support because of traumas of war. Actually, this number was repeated already by my colleagues. 15 million will be in need of psychosocial support because of trauma of war. We all remember horrific pictures from Bucha, Irpin, Izum, and stories of victims of sexual violence, those who survived it. Russian troops used rape as a weapon in the territories they occupied. Gang rapes, assaults taking place at gunpoint, and rapes committed in front of children. Did these cases affect mental health conditions? Yes, for sure. In addition, violent survivors from regions near the front line and retaken areas, deliberated areas, have limited access to health and mental health care due to the destroyed healthcare infrastructure, forced displacement of health workers, and disrupted medical supply chain. Next, please. To provide care directly to violence survivors and war-affected people, Health Right has launched a project in partnership with another non-profit human development organization called FHI 360 and with support from USAID and BHA. To target people in the worst affected by military operations areas, we implement the project in eastern and southern Ukraine, in Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv, Odessa regions. Currently, 9 integrated response units operate in these 5 regions close to the front line. We provide coordinated, holistic care that include immediate health help and crisis psychological support, primary medical treatment advice for a psychologist or social worker, legal advice and representation, and case management services. Integrated units are multidisciplinary, and each is staffed with coordinator, 2 psychologists, a child psychologist, 2 social workers, a lawyer, and a driver. Next, please. So, general physicians are the first contact for medical care, including mental health services, and integrated GBV response and care units are created in primary healthcare facilities to be the main access point for holistic care for violence survivors. Those we conduct a lot of MHPSS trainings for general practitioners. We are partners of the World Health Organization, the Ministry of Health of Ukraine, in the national-wide campaign to train primary healthcare providers, doctors and nurses in the mental health GAP action program. It's called MHGAP. Also, we conduct other GBV and MHPSS focused trainings for staff and partners on clinical management of rape, for example, problem management plus, self-help plus, mental health, first aid, and other. Next, please. We've also partnered with local service providers, community-based organizations, and volunteer groups to establish new referral pathways for those who need our help. Mobility of MHPSS services, it's very important. Personnel of the GBV response and care units also work as a mobile teams to identify and reach violence survivors and other spaces like medical centers, maternity clinics, IDP reception centers, shelters, day centers. In addition, violence survivors can access comprehensive assistance, consultations with psychologists and social workers, crisis psychological support, emergency mental health assistance, and remote case management services through the Brave and Safe online platform, which we just launched at the end of December 2022. Next, please. We have been implementing the project just since September 2022. Between December and February, almost 12,889 clients received our assistance from specialists of the GBV response and care units, including 664 gender-based violence survivors. So we're speaking about just 3 months, and 1,077 persons with disabilities. Also, 453 clients were helped and received our support through Brave and Safe online platform. Next, please. In conclusion, I would like to mention our latest initiative The campaign Don't Give Up Ukraine, its goal is to inform as many people as possible about the continuing war and resulting social and health challenges, to highlight the efforts of civil society organizations like ours, and also needed support for state partners and state providers. Thank you for attention and continued support of our country, and don't give up on Ukraine. Thank you very much.
I like I like that finish. Don't give up on Ukraine. It's true. Keep it front and center. Our next speaker will be Alexandra Semen, who is a therapist who works with Halina Skipalska, and her bailiwick is the Safe Women Hub program. We're eager to hear more about that.
Hello, dear. I will ask to share the screen with our presentation. My name is Alexandra Semen. I'm a psychologist on platform Safe Women Hub, working with trauma, PTSD, depression, anxiety, and phobic disaster, working with victims of sexual, physical, and psychological violence. And today we will talk about our platform Safe Women Hub. In response of numerous violations of the rights of women and girls as a result of a war in Ukraine in April 2022, the International Charitable Foundation, Ukrainian Foundation of Public Health, created the Safe Women Hub platform to provide psychological and social support to women and girls affected by the war and raise their awareness of the prevention of sexual violence, sexual exploitation, and human trafficking. Safe Women Hubs is the first nationwide platform. It's the first virtual nationwide platform in Ukraine to assist war-affected women and girls. Next, please. Women who left their homes because of the war and stayed in occupied territories for a long time were in information vacuum. They fled not a place that they can have social resources, just a safe places. These women are highly disorientated and at risk of different types of gender-based violence. Safe Women Hub platform is a bridge that links the girls from temporary occupied territory on the move to the safety place, who live in collective humanitarian centers, or even who have relocated in Europe to vital emergency psychological, humanitarian, and social services. Next, please. Platform provides psychological, social, and legal assistance to women and girls affected by the wars. Raise public awareness about gender-based violence, sexual violence and exploitation, and human trafficking of women and girls, and inform about available services to prevent and combat them. Safe Women Hub platform operate with different social media like Facebook, Telegram, Instagram. Counseling provided by 7 psychologists, 2 social workers, and 1 manager. Channels of communicate with our clients is different, depend on those clients will choose. It can be phone, messengers, or video communications. Next, please. Advantages of remote counseling for clients. Safe Women Hub platform has certain advantages precisely because it is online platform. First of all, it is safety. Women don't need to move around the city in public spaces where they can expose themselves to mine danger, shelling, raging areas, or any danger in the dark. Anonymity. Women can provide no information about themselves and still receive counseling, which is especially important for clients who have suffered from gender-based violence and conflict-related sexual violence. Accessibility of communication. Women need to have just internet or mobile connection. This is very important for those women who are stayed on occupied territory or who are stayed abroad. They need someone to talk in a psychologist, and they have this possibility. Location of clients. Next, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Most women don't want to disclose their location, and we respect this right to make this decision. Among these women who do this disclose their location, most of them from Western region, Kyiv, or region from abroad. Many women who left the occupied territory and other countries or in another region of Ukraine make a request for help in Safe Women Hub platform. And this is women report about they have been victims of different types of sexual or gender-based violence. Specialists of Safe Women Hub help these women to stabilize their emotional state, recover from conflicted psychological traumas, and provide information about how they can take care about themselves. And as in Ukraine, as abroad too, we support these women, and this gives them strength to stabilize their psycho-emotional state and start their life anew. Next slide, please. Can you please, the next slide, turn on? Thank you. The next. Next one, please. Received of our consultation. Over 5,200 women and girls receive our counseling. 2,652 women and girls receive our 4,853 psychological consultation. We have 371 inquiries from gender-based violence, including 195 inquiries from domestic violence. Also, we have 79 inquiries from women victims of conflict-related sexual violence. It was different types of violence, as rape, forced undressed, forced grouping, filming, and sexual torture. The women can send them required as a social worker, as a psychologist, and this is different inquire. Sometimes they need to have a few consultation with the social workers and few consultation with psychologists. Please turn the next slide. The most big part of inquiries to psychologists, and it's panic attack, a depressive state, and neurotic disaster related to the stress. In our work, women who are applying to our platform, we meet some challenges, and this make time to resolve, but we manage to overcome them successfully. Most often, these challenges is related to working with victims of conflict-related sexual violence, domestic violence, and gender-based violence. Often, women don't want to disclose that they have been victims of these violence types. And they start to open just in the third, fifth consultation. So we need to understand this and support them. Also, women feel helpless and about help and justice. They feel ashamed. They have a fear of disclosure of personal information. They have relative traumatic events alone. They don't tell anyone about this. As a result of the lack of assistance, they lose their job, refuse to communicate of relatives. Their psychological and physical health become worse, and their quality of life become worse too. So we also received a request from widows of Ukrainian military and women who have lost their relatives during the war in Ukraine. As the war have been going on for over the year, the number of these requests is growing every day. We support these women who come to our platform, provide them with information that helps of specific different, maybe sometimes very difficult cases. We teach clients psychological self-regulation skills, but we never make a decision for a woman to go for a police or another choice. This is them choice, and we support them. So such support allows them to recover quickly and find a way out of difficult circumstances within they find themselves. How to support women and girls in Ukraine. Support humanitarian efforts of local women-led and women's rights organizations by providing them with financial resources and making their voices heard of national and international platforms. Strengthen leadership of women and girls and expand their participation in decision-making at all levels. To remove from the information space expression referring to women, survivors of violence such a broken life forever and wound of life. Strengthen integrity cooperation in assisting women survivors of sexual violence, and quickly fill gaps in response survivors services to gender-based violence and sexual violence. Thank you everyone for your attention. Thank you everyone for your support. Someone told that Ukrainian is brave, but maybe, but it is because we have international support and you need. We're very pleasured about this supporting. It's give us opportunity to help our people, our women and our girls. Thank you everyone for giving us this light and hope.
Thank you very much, Alexandra Semen, for your presentation and for the insights, everything that you've shared with us. I can feel a lot of questions bubbling up, so I'm hoping that the audience listening is also thinking along those lines, what more we would like to hear from you. Our next speaker is Dr. Oksana Korolovich. She has been with Health Right International and with the Ukrainian Public Health Foundation since 2015. And Dr. Korolovich, I'm hoping that you will also speak to the fact that you were quite an innovator in the field and that you are an influencer and the winner of the Women of the Third Millennium Award and many other distinctions, because you are a kind of a broad, you have a very broad perspective on this. So I'm hoping that you will kind of fill us in on your approach to the work that you do. And I know that you will be talking about the very great importance of supporting other psychologists and working with with women.
Thank you. I want to tell about our challenges. My name is Oksana Korolovich. I'm a PhD in psychology. I'm a systemic psychologist, facilitator, mediator, trainer, and supervisor. And also I am a president of NGO Lagerta. It's an international community of women, founder and director of the Oksana Korolovich Development and Education Space. I am a founder and senior expert of the Fallen Heroes Women project, which aims to support widows in Ukraine. Natalia, can you help me with slides? Thank you. So, war in Ukraine and how its challenges have revealed the inner strength of psychologists. Next slide, please. While battalions of military men and women are fighting with weapons on the front lines to defend the country, other battalions, including battalions of psychologists, defend their wars at the fronts, each their own. In other battalions, whose work is usually unseen by the public, the battalions of supervisors has started its fight too. And psychologists sought assistance from this hidden battalion when they faced something they were not prepared to deal with. Our joint work aims not only to cope with it, with a difficult and traumatic experience. A large part of our work is dedicated to reclaiming, meaning reconnection with personal strength coming from the family system's experience of psychologists through work with their mastery capacity. The main challenges we have been addressing, the next slide, please. Natalia? Yeah, thank you. The first, working with personal trauma, building confidence, mindfulness, and resilience. Counseling people in crisis requires a lot of resources and specifies professional skills, which psychologists have to master sometimes while being literally in basements under bombardment. Slide next. Natalia. Next, please. Some problems maybe with Natalia. Next, please. Understanding your areas of personal growth. Psychologists had strengthened their professional capacities and expand their skills rapidly. Without improving knowledge and skills, it would be impossible to provide comprehensive and quality support to people. Yeah, and the next slide, 5. The next, Natalia. Okay. Okay, so post-traumatic growth. Most psychologists had no experience to close contact with death or experience working with widows and families who lost loved ones. Psychologists had to connect with the mastery capacity which helps separate compression and building clients' inner strength from supporting, self-sacrificing, and infancy. And the next, okay. Enhancing the master capacity of psychologists, the work supervisors have been doing with psychologists since the beginning of the war. It's a deep existential work with soul, humanity, and in conscience strength. The challenges faced by psychologists gave them a powerful impetus for growth, made them learn faster, help better, and find a huge source of personal power in themselves that help to reach their full professional potential. The enemy wanted to destroy us, but we managed not only to survive, we already won. We transformed pain into strength and progress that inspires the all free world today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That transformation of pain into strength is a very good image to keep, a very good phrase to keep deep with us. We have the luxury of entertaining quite a few questions. And we have some time to do that, which is very, very nice in these settings in the webinars. And one question that bubbled up immediately with me is just the impression that this kind of trauma, it requires quite a lot of work and over many years. This is not a healing that takes place quickly. And the psychologists or the therapists who are working with the clients, the women in Ukraine and others, and the whole, whoever needs to talk, are themselves also under great stress. going through the same experiences to a degree in many ways, and dealing with their own pain as they try to help others. And it seems that it would require just an army of such professionals to really handle the situation properly. I wonder what, are there plans being made for a pipeline of professionals, or what kind of trainings are in progress already to fortify, the skills and the number of people who can do this provision? Dr. Kudelovich, I was hoping that maybe you would give some insight on that.
Я можу це сказати, пані Галина, якщо Наталя мені допоможе перекласти, бо я...
Sure. Natalia Varanitska, you will help with translation.
Окей. Наталя, ти тут?
Yes, I will help with translation. Питання було, чи так виглядає, що всі ці наслідки війни і пов'язані з нею травми вимагатимуть просто величезну кількість професіоналів, які будуть задіяні, власне, в надання психологічної допомоги. Чи є якісь бачення, яким чином їх можна підготувати, і щоб вони допомагали?
Я зрозуміла. Да, дякую, Наталя. Спершу в нас є зараз дуже унікальний випадок з точки зору досвіду, який ми зараз як психотерапевти отримуємо, бо ми з одного боку є учасниками цього всього, да, ми так само переживаємо, пропускаємо через себе, а з іншої сторони нам треба миттєво перетворювати цей досвід в силу. І це не теоретичне, да, там про те, що ми... Ти встигаєш дати тобі час, да, перекласти? Наталя.
Так. This is a unique case Oksana would like to highlight, because on the one hand, psychologists are participants who actually live through all these emotions and experience, and on the other hand, they need very rapidly, quickly, immediately to transform their own experience to help other people.
З одного боку, ми, як фахівці травматерапії, вивчали роботу з травмою, яка не лежить в острій стадії. Ми зустрічалися тільки з нею, коли ми працювали з темами острої травми, коли ми бачили клієнта з насильством. Ми не бачили такої кількості травми, яка заполонила психіку зараз країни. Її надто багато. І тому ми зараз не по книжках вивчаємо це все. Дуже багато методів ми зараз, аудит робимо, які працюють з травмою, які можуть зараз з нею працювати, і вони набагато краще працюють методи, а які методи можуть працювати з травмою, яка вже в хронічному стадії, ми з нею працюємо в більш-менш спокійної атмосфері, скажімо так, не в період війни. Це такий, з точки зору науковості, ми можемо побачити, що працює.
We learned many aspects and things theoretically, but specialists face so many people, so many traumatic experience, and we need to make a certain audit to analyze what tools and techniques work for these people in this context, and probably some tools and techniques learned from books, they are not very effective, unfortunately.
Під час війни ми зараз говоримо.
During the war.
Це важливо. Тому для психологів зараз було дуже важливо стати дорослими, як людям, да? Просто зростати дуже швидко, бо ми маємо бути отим безпечним дорослим, який стоїть поряд з травмованою людиною.
That is why it was vital and even crucial to grow up as adult very quickly, to get Mattia to be very safe and calm person who have capacity to help traumatized persons.
Да. І це дає нам можливість повернутися до себе і побачити, да, що є те, що треба підтягнути, да, зробити максимально комфорт, а що є те, що в нас також є. Але закінчуючи, хочу сказати, що ми зараз є тими, хто зможе, да, бути не просто травматерапевтом. У нас зараз є вже армія травматерапевтів, класних фахівців, які точно на сьогоднішній день будуть навчати не тільки Європу, але і всі куточки нашої планети. Бо в нас є той досвід дуже сильний, потужний.
That is why it is very important for specialists to work with their own experience and emotions. But for now, I can say that we have an army of psychologists who are able to work with trauma today in Ukraine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that full discussion. That was very, very good to hear. Thank you. I understand that there are questions that have been bubbling up from the audience through the chats or the question and answer function. And we'll have a chance to hear some of those questions to the panelists.
Sure. So we actually have a couple questions. So the first one is a question to the Deputy Minister. How can the larger community support Ukraine in this moment?
Can you repeat what kind of community?
Natalia, will you
Just-
help with translation, please, Natalia? One moment,
Я не
will
почула
translate.
просто.
Зараз Наталя перекладе.
Як міжнародна спільнота може допомогти зараз Україні підтримати її в цій нелегкій ситуації? Якщо можна українською, буду тоді, якщо пані Наталя допоможе. Перш за все, як вже сказали колеги, Україна зараз дуже активно набуває досвід психологічної і психіатричної допомоги в умовах війни. Ukraine is acquiring a lot of experience today how to work with psychology and in the field of psychology and psychiatry. Тому, власне, ось, наприклад, ми зараз активно вивчаємо досвід травми, з яким працюють наші колеги в Ізраїлі. Now we learn experience from our colleagues from Israel, for instance. Там є така ізраїльська коаліція травми, і вони якраз працюють з програмами життєстійкості в умовах обстрілів постійних і допомагають місцевому населенню більш з меншими, я б так сказала, втратами переносити такі обстріли. We have partners from Israeli Coalition of Trauma, and they share their experience with us how to build resilience, how to deal with stress during shelling, bombardment, how to help civilians. І ми, власне, плануємо створити такі центри життєстійкості, які будуть навчати і першій психологічній допомозі, і реагуванню в ситуації обстрілів по всій Україні. We are going to create many centers for building resilience, to conduct trainings on first mental health aid and other specialized training to build resilience. Інший приклад – це Міжнародна організація лікарів без кордонів, які, як ви знаєте, не наймають місцевих працівників в країнах, де вони допомагають, а вони саме командами їздять по різних країнах, і вони також дуже активно підтримують, в тому числі і надаючи психологічну підтримку людям, які пережили обстріли, які втратили здоров'я і отримують медичну допомогу. Another good example of such partnership is Doctors Without Barriers. They do not hire local staff. They bring international experts, and they are coming from region to region across Ukraine to provide psychological help. Але ми розуміємо, що іноземних фахівців з необхідним досвідом їх замало для того, щоб покрити потреби ось тих 15 мільйонів українців, про які вже сьогодні двічі згадувалося. Unfortunately, and we are fully aware of it, that international experts are unable to address such number of people, of Ukrainians who will need this psychological help. We mentioned several times this number. It's about 15 million Ukrainians. Тому те, що можна зробити, це підтримати в дуже такому екстреному навчанні всіх фахівців, які працюють з людьми. Це і соціальні працівники, і психологи, тобто надати і лікарі, і вчителі, тобто надати необхідні навички там, першої психологічної допомоги, для того, щоб всі ці фахівці могли своєчасно підтримувати людей, які потребують підтримки. We see the solution in providing extra training for people who deal with civilians, psychologists, social work, and enhance their capacity and skills.
Well, I seem to, is there a bad connection? Yes, I was hoping that it was just my laptop and not everyone else's. Oh, I know that we do have a few more questions bubbling up, and one of them I would like at this point to welcome Oksana Yakushko, who managed to join us. Thank you very much for being able to get in. So welcome. Dr. Yakushko is a therapist who works with the other partnering organization here, the Refugees Mental Health Resource Network. And at this point, because one question that just popped up, in fact, is how is mental health care being provided outside of Ukraine's borders? And the Mental Health Resource Network, founded by Dr. Elizabeth Carl, who's unable to be with us, I mentioned earlier, is doing just that. So Dr. Yakushko, would you be able to fill us in on that project and your participation in it also? So please, let's hear your presentation at this moment as that question is being entertained.
Thank you, Martha. Hello, everyone. Доброго ранку з Каліфорнії. Вибачаю, що я запізнився. Sorry, I was late. My timing was different. So I have worked with Dr. Carl and the Refugee Resource Network through the year, but mostly in a form of presentations about Ukrainian refugees and so forth. So I wish she was here to present, because their mission and commitment is to work with refugees from all across the world, and specifically train providers to work with refugees, and then to connect both providers, organizations, and individuals who are trained and able to work with refugees together, so linking together. And so when she asked me, I was going to present from also my own perspective of working with Ukrainian refugees and diaspora members in United States. And just to highlight, she specifically asked me to kind of the more Ukrainian perspective from this side. So I wanted to just, I'm so excited and grateful to my colleagues who are Ukrainian and in Ukraine for their work, and just to highlight some of the unique things that Ukrainian refugees, specifically women, experience here across the board in United States, which is quite far away, so not the border countries. But I looked up, and in November, December, the number of recent refugees from war from Ukraine in the United States is somewhere between 85,000, and then another number I saw 115. So I think 100,000 numbers was open. But those of you who are familiar with process of coming here to United States under very special like auspices, United States government, that for a long time it was set up in a way to make Ukrainian refugees really vulnerable. You either had to have a family member who sponsored you with a lot of money, or anybody can sponsor you. So what was found out is that people were traveling, say, to Mexico, finding out traffickers, more or less, who were then paying for them to bring them to the United States. And so my experience too, and I have worked with people, that the situation of vulnerability and trafficking, I think that there's been some pushback and change in the policies, but it was, especially around the beginning of war, really tremendous. And people were very, very vulnerable, because the United States is one of the kind of largest and most active trafficking places. So there have been groups trying to address that. Ukrainians have organized, and have a lot of my Ukrainian colleagues travel to Mexico to the camps and help people to really protect them, and especially because they're women and children. And so one of the things I work in my practice and an organization with Ukrainian women and girls refugees, there is more risk of violence and difficulties here, as all refugees face. But also those of you who are Ukrainians far away, most people are, of course, tremendously stressed and worried. All of us wake up with Telegram and news. All of us go to sleep with Telegram and news. There's continual worry, anxiety, uncertainty, and guilt. So those, the sense of guilt, I'm not doing enough, I left my family, how is my family doing? And just really tremendously complicated ways to navigate being so far away. Many people continually talk about, is it time to go back? Do I go back? Children complicate the matter to return, of course. So that's and it's a lot more difficult. It's not Poland. Can't just hop a train and get back. So it's how that works out. The other piece that I wanted to say is, and I've been trying on my end and working with the organization, a lot of Ukrainians, I don't know how it is in other countries, get placed with Russian-speaking therapists. In fact, there would be an announcement and would say, here's Ukrainian war refugees, Ukrainian or Russians, okay. So people do not screen whether these individuals are working with Russian or pro-Russian therapists. And I've been trying to write and speak about the fact that it's extremely traumatizing. And I work with people who themselves will, even with broken English, they would rather speak to an English provider in English rather than speak anybody who presents as Russian, because I work with people who say things like, you don't have it so bad, Russians have it bad too, they're good Russians, and so forth. And it is and their trauma is minimized, their experience is minimized. And those of us who are Ukrainians know the hatred that Russian community feels towards Ukrainians. And I've been in New York City a few months ago, and there are cars with Russian flags and the Z signs driving around New York. So it's not particularly safe environment, and there's so many more Russian speakers. And it's extremely frustrating, has been as a Ukrainian provider, to find Ukrainian-based community that's trained and understands history of Ukraine, history of Ukrainian relations to Russia, and why so many of us have, I was here for 32 years now. I was so Russified, right, from Kiev. And I've switched to Ukrainian. So all of us, right, switching, majority of us, to speak and writing in Ukrainian, and how important it is to provide culturally sensitive, culturally relevant treatment in Ukrainian. And so lastly, I want to say, as a member of diaspora, I looked up, in the United States, it's 1 million+ Ukrainians. Canada is the second largest numbers. It's a lot of Ukrainians. So with family members, with histories in Ukraine, and it's an extremely painful experience and very difficult, because many people also fled to, say, Canada, because they were experienced, my family too, history of genocides, history of persecution, right, history of all kinds of other trauma. And now you have this Russian aggression, which opens for older generation, for new generation, their conversations and difficulties. And so the kind of multiple complex trauma reactions that are there for, and diaspora members really are organized, people are coming together, doing so very much. But the perception, I feel like, from Americans and others, that America and West are doing so much, there's so much going to, and I will say, as a Ukrainian, most of us talk about how little is being done, and how frustrating it is to say, oh, there's another decision made, and half a year from now, Ukrainians will get some tanks. And so I just, we feel like it's the kind of confusion about what Ukraine is. There's a lot of pro-Russian stuff all around. You open the show and it's Dostoevsky. You open the theater page and it's Anastasia. And it's very, very difficult to be in a Russified with Americans who don't understand often the history and what's going on. And so diaspora members too, because of their own experience, may really struggle. So I just wanted to end there, and also to say that, in the question of what Ukrainians need, I think for all of us sake, and especially for Ukrainian and my family in Ukraine and others, we need to stop the war, and we need to have weapons and other means to stop it. But I also, as a psychologist, and for all of you too, and I work with all kinds of groups of psychologists, national organization in Ukraine and elsewhere, to provide, because trauma is traumatizing and war is horrible and inhumane. And so and the refugee experience is very difficult in best of circumstances, in very disorienting. So I hope that, I'm grateful to everybody who does the work to support Ukrainians. And I hope that, we come together and find ways to both end the war and heal and support Ukrainians to recover here and elsewhere. So дякую, слава Україні, and
Героям
look forward.
слава.
Thank you.
Heroyam Slava. Thank you, Dr. Yakushko, for managing to join us, and for answering that question, and also for bringing in the fact that the Ukrainian diaspora and the Ukrainian population, the residents in Ukraine, really form a transnational space now more than ever. And you mentioned the diaspora and its own trauma, because very true, as a daughter of immigrants to refugees to the United States after World War II, the firstborn in my family in the United States, we recognize, we're feeling it, that there's a lot of dredging up of emotions and things that we would ourselves work out, with a therapist to talk it out. Thank goodness a lot of our parents' generation is no longer alive to see this, because we wouldn't want them to be subjected to this pain right now. But that's another population that is not the focus of today's webinar. But thank you for bringing that up, because it really is part of our transnational community's kind of trauma going through this together. And I'm sure there are other questions. I wanted to ask Dr. Alexandra Semen about her position. I believe you're in the western part of the country where you're seeing more of the flow out. And you spoke a lot about trafficking. And I'm wondering whether the community kind of awareness is high about the what do you call the threats of trafficking. How good is that community awareness campaign?
Hello, dear. Наталя, будь ласка, докладно мені можете перекласти, і я тоді відповім на англійській.
Питання полягає у тому, наскільки є високими ризики торгівлі людьми, і наскільки, ну, чи багато про це говориться і попереджають людей, які внутрішньо переміщені зараз.
Yes, we have a big risk, and to be honest, we have some cases where when clients has inquiries to our platform, and it was after the situation that she like almost will step in this big problem, but she write in Facebook, and another women help her. So it's true, and how it's process, like how procedure of this. Women go for a board, and sometimes they go to the shelters, or sometimes they try to find a work, and they find like agent that promise them a new work, and they say, okay, you will come here in country, and you need to wait some times to live in another people, and then you will have a job. And usually these people with whom these women need to live, it's a man. And for those time that they live there, sometime it was like some case of sexual violence and some case of trafficking. And we need to talk about this more. We need to give more information, give more like the social information and more figures, and maybe it will good to turn on this in news program to talk about the treatment, because it is very dangerous. And we have different types of treatments of people. It can be sexual violence, or it can be prostitution, or it can be like more dangerous thing where the person can dead at all. So yes, this is big problem, and we have some cases, and we work about this, and we do some prevent information session with our clients, and talk about how to prevent this situation, how to don't, it's like a safety plan. We talk about them with a safety plan, and usually it's help them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Shanice, are there more questions that you have there?
Yes, there are. So the first question, we have a couple of them, is, have there been different phases of mental health needs throughout this past year? So from initial displacement until today?
It's for me or for someone else?
You are welcome to answer, but anybody can chime in.
Okay. We see some problems that was in the start of the world. First of all, when the war started, it was like shock state. A lot of people stay in shock state, and when like first weeks of the world, we see people on the corner. It was a lot of women with a child, and they was like in like freezy state. They don't eat few days, they don't sleep few days, and it was in the start of the war. Then this situation will change. They so in the start of the world, it was like first like needed is to eat, to sleep, and to get out, become of this shock to stabilizing state. Now this need is another. First of all, we have the war more than a year, and we can see PTSD some symptoms. So it's more than half of year, and a lot of clients need to help of doctors and medicine because they have like clinical cases, and this is really true because last month most than 50% of clients who have inquiries to our platform, we see that we need to do psychiatric diagnostic. And to be honest, I go to study psychiatry and clinical gestalt to understand how to help them, because I understand I don't know what to do with them. And як буде перенаправляємо? Я перепрошую.
Refer.
And we refer them for
refer
doctors.
them to other.
Yes, and we refer them for doctors, and it will be very good if we have in our platform some doctors with whom our psychologists can work in a team. So we can provide these services much better, because we don't know women have possibility to go to the doctor or no. If this woman is abroad, and we see the big statistic of those women who are abroad, it's a big problems to find a doctor or find Ukrainian or Russian doctors. So it will be like one of the first needed to have some doctors with whom we can cooperate, and we are very happy if someone help us and help our organization. One of big problem is divorces. It's like a huge problem. A lot of people now is on this stadium of divorcing. We see actually domestic violence in different types of wife of our soldiers who had a PTSD symptoms. And these women said, we don't understand what happened with our husband or my brother or my father. He like changed. It's not this person. 1 second he like normal person, and then he like a child, and then he has so angry screaming, and we don't know what to do with them. So we need to understand that we must rehabilitate this our soldiers. Some of them have big traumas, not just physically. They have a big trauma of psychological big trauma. Widows, it's one of big problems too. Very big problem, because some of these women cannot become of the shock, and these women on a state and of suicide things, and some of them think about suicide. And it's like we need to give emergency psychological supporting, and it's problem, because some of these women say us, my husband was all of my life. I can't live without him. I do everything for him. I live him. I love him. How it is possible? A lot of people is lost. And the same thing, these women and wives of soldiers don't know they're alive or not. So we need to understand that we must help them too.
Can I also add? Thank you, Alexandra. You provided a comprehensive answer, but I also would like to add some comments and some thoughts to share with you regarding this question and also previous questions. So yes, we as specialists, we observe different trends and different periods. So people are on a little bit different needs when starting at the end of February, in the middle of summer, and then now after 1 year of this escalation of war, another stage of war. At the same time, we understand that our frontline workers, those psychologists, they are also in different stages, So they were ready to provide support to everybody at the beginning of March, for example, April, May, June, July. But now, after 1 year, it's very important also to find some resources, and these actually resources can be provided by international community to help our psychologists to cope with other issues which they also face. As Oksana mentioned, they live in these conditions, they work very hardly. I know that each psychologist really is overloaded now in Ukraine. Those who are in Ukraine, who are in Europe, who work from abroad, all they have a lot of work, and they need to also receive support and techniques, even financial resources to be able to pay for supervisions. And supervisions in this case is very important. It's very important also to bring to international society, to donors, that now we need to budget supervisions for our staff, because we will, in other case, we will not have staff. So they will face burnout, they will not be able to cope with their personal problems. They are also displaced people. They also have children separated, separation with family members, loss of family members, and etc. Our psychologist just from health right just recently lost house in Zaporizhia. Do you remember probably that case a week ago when all block of building was fully destroyed after rocket attack on Zaporizhia? So after 1 week, she cannot speak, she cannot work. And it's very important also to think for organizations how we can support people in such situations. And this can happen every day. Also, I would like to mention a little bit about other problems, other forms which actually are linked to psychological needs: gender-based violence, sexual violence. So psychologists who work with such deep traumas, they also need additional, comparing to other support, because it's very hard when you work more than 1 year with case and you understand that the progress is not so fast as you expected. So this means that these psychologists, they also need trainings, additional, maybe some study tours, as Uliana Tokareva, Deputy Minister, mentioned that there are some good interventions and approaches in Israel, in other countries. So I think that now it's also time for international community to invest, to share knowledge, to build capacity of our psychologists, to invite them to different opportunities to train them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to remember that this is a very long-term traumatizing situation already, given that it is 9 years and that it affects each and every citizen, resident of Ukraine in multiple ways and overlapping ways, and in kind of ongoing layers of trauma as well. I had a question to Dr. Kodolovich about the Fallen Heroes, Widows Network. Are you trying to, is there a registry of women who have been widowed, and what kind of mutual support, I assume, is also part of this organization?
Окей, Наталія.
Питання полягає щодо вашого
я-
проекту. Герої, що загинули, чи ви ведете якийсь облік, яким чином відбувається?
Да, я скажу. Все. Давай, я скажу. Я все зрозуміла, значить, правильно. Спершу хочу сказати, що цей проект вже набирає обертів, тому що так сталося, що вдів стає все більше і більше.
This project has become more and more popular for the reason, unfortunately, that we have more and more widows.
Спершу хочу сказати, що до мене зараз звертаються жінки, які вже комунікують одна з одною. Це перше. По-друге, соціальні фахівці, які працюють разом з воєнкоматами, да, які дають повістки, вони також перенаправляють і звертаються до мене, коли вже вони не справляються. І на сьогодні можу сказати, що, звісно, я їх записую, але я не можу, це конфіденційна інформація, і це робиться не для того, щоб розголошувати її. Да? Але, звичайно, у мене є ця інформація і є різний рівень проживання, горювання. Да? Є жінки, яким менш потрібно, вони отримують, знаєте, більше психоедукацію. Вони розуміють, що так, все йде ок, і вони в правильному динаміці, і ці динаміці внутрішні, вони відчувають цю опору і можуть впоратися. І такі жінки отримують до 6 зустрічей. Але деякі, які мають психосоматичні вже розлади, анорексія, булімія, панічні атаки, тут зазвичай я вже працюю більше.
Of course, Oksana has a registry, but it is confidential. Now many women advise Oksana's services, and she also has a referral from social workers providing services to veterans, their families, and she deals with women at different stage of grief. Some of them need only a 5-6 meeting and some psychoeducational support, and other are in the situation completely desperate and lost meaning of life.
Дуже важлива такий момент в цій підтримці. Вони звертаються до мене ще й тому швидше, що я є сама вдовою. І це для них є не тільки опора в тому, що я фахівець і працюю дуже багато, 25 років стажу, вони знають, що я травматерапевт, але мені всі, хто зі мною працюють, сказали, знаєте, чому я до вас пішла? Тому що я знаю, що ви мене розумієте. Ви також це пережили, і я бачу, що ви з цим впоралися. І це мене надихає, я точно, значить, зможу це подолати. І це такий важливий момент, що зараз я формую команду психологів, навчаю їх, але при виборі людей в свою команду я дивлюся, а як в них є контакт з великими фігурами життя і смерті, як вони самі мають досвіди. Бо це дуже важливо, просто теоретично розуміти це і бути в контакті з цією силою внутрішньою, коли ти вже переживаєш цю трансформацію, коли проживаєш оцю всю контакт зі смертю близької людини.
Unfortunately, Oksana is a widow too. Her husband was killed during this war, and this is also a reason why so many women seek her help, and it is a type of peer-to-peer support. You know, when you choose a person who are not only a good specialist, has many year experience, but also a person who experienced the same trauma. And now Oksana is in her own some professionals also experience how these people hands of loss of life and death.
Мені здається, що ці питання, вони питання про тему жінок, які в горюванні, сімей, які в горюванні, це як, знаєте, сніжником, це буде все більше і більше. Тому, як я зазначала раніше, психологи в звичайному житті не всі мають можливість працювати з такими дуже серйозними кейсами. Тому наразі зараз як тренер, як супервайзер я даю акцент і навчання, і можливість бути дотичним в цієї можливості так давати підтримку, щоб вона була професійна, щоб вона була від серця, і щоб вона була, знаєте, жива. Через це дуже така чутлива тема. І тут, якщо ти щирий, відкритий, і тоді це дає дійсно можливість жінці пройти це і вийти на силу. Бо моє завдання – це посттравматичний зріст. І це те, що дасть можливість всім нам отримати в суспільстві не травмованих жінок, а жінок з суперсилою. Це 100%. Я так впевнена.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not every specialist is able to provide support for women.
Галина Богданівна, може, допоможете?
And
See that there's a little
Oksana works now a lot as a trainer, as supervisor to build this capacity.
Dr. Kotelaj, thank you for sharing a personal aspect of your work with us. We appreciate all of this very, very much. Shanice tells us that there are 2 more questions, and we have just a little bit of time at the end. Maybe we can hear both questions, and if there's a round of response to that, and we'll have to end on that note. But please, Shanice, if there's something we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share both of the questions. So first, what are the lessons that have been learned, and what advice would you give to other countries seeking to expand access to mental health care for refugees and IDPs, especially women and girls who have experienced gender-based violence during the conflict? And then the second and final question is, one second here. How can global partners help Ukraine in this moment?
Elena, would you like to take a stab from your perspective?
Yes, I can start. Maybe Teresa will add something later. So I think that we already covered partially this question. So in my opinion, the main lesson learned is that, and actually we learn all time. So, and probably there will be another stage when we again will learn something. So. When lesson learned is that mental health is very important. And we need to, countries, communities, they need to invest in mental health of their citizens. So citizens have to be strong, have to understand how to cope with problems. Everybody should know how to, as now we in Ukraine, we know how to provide first medical aid kit help, and how to provide first psychological aid. So it's very important. And another lesson learned is that it's important also to invest in specialists, in psychologists, clinicians, psychiatrists, in their mental health, to build their capacity, so they will be ready to any kind of disaster or war or some other problem. So let's think about disaster which happened in Turkey. So they have also for sure face a lot of problems, psychological problems and mental health problems. And speaking about global partners, yes, it's important not give up on Ukraine, to remember about us, to share with us knowledge, to share with us the best interventions that work in your countries, that you probably piloted or adopted, used in some other countries with war or some disasters. So please continue to support us, and we are really very, very grateful for all donors that support support us. We mentioned here a lot as a US-based organization about support provided by US government, but we know, for example, that Switzerland, they also have great programs implemented in Ukraine focused on strengthening mental health of Ukrainians, reform of mental health system. WHO is doing a lot for Ukraine. We are very grateful. Thank you. Teresa, maybe you will add something.
Thanks, Halina. I think you touched on all of the components that I would want to share with the audience. The main message that I would like to share is that we are at a current moment at this time in the war, and we're very focused on response and recovery. But there will be a time that we're moving more towards rebuilding. And within that rebuilding, we have to think about mental health in the long term and what that means for healing, what that means in terms of resilience for not just women and children, but the community as a whole. So my advice to the global community is to sustain their commitment to investing in this long recovery and rebuilding process.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I'd like to, on behalf of the World Federation of Ukrainian Women's Organizations, to thank our partners in organizing this webinar, and also to mention the co-sponsors that we have the International Council of Women and the NGO Communication Coordination Committee for the United Nations. Thank you, each and every one of you panelists, for everything that you've shared with us from your professional and personal lives. We appreciate you very, very much. We ask everyone to do not give up on Ukraine, support Ukraine strongly. Thank you. Thank you for that. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
From Slava.